today we're going to be talking about the Pacific Northwest Coast Native Americans. They're the ones that are in the area that we live in. So we have seen evidence of how they've been living all around us. As we go through this, I encourage you to pause the video and take some notes just like we would do in class, where we would write up on the big chart paper about geography and shelter and clothing and arts and crafts so that you can have those notes with you for future activities. Okay, let's get started. In this picture, we see a picture of Mount St. Helens. You might have visited there. And on the map, we can see the area of Washington where we live and Oregon, and then some surrounding areas where you could find the tribes that make up the Northwest Native Americans. So I'll read the slide to you. It says the Northwest Indian region ran along the Pacific coast from southern Alaska to Washington state. The land of the Northwest Indians had snow-capped mountains, oceans, rivers, and green forests. The climate is cool in the summer and not too cold in the winter months. The rain and the mild temperature encouraged the growth of the great redwood, cedar, and fir trees. Within the region, there were 7 main tribes. These were the Coast Salish, Nootka, Kwakiutl, Bella Coola, Haydu, Tsimshian, and Tlingit. For those of you that have gone and visited the Ridgefield Wildlife Refuge, you may have been in one of these longhouses. It says, the Northwest Indians used planks of red cedar trees to build their houses. And if you remember, we used cedar beads to make our necklaces and bracelets in class because the cedar was very strong and withheld up to all the rain that we get in this area. A plank is a long, thin piece of wood. The big houses, as they were called, were able to hold 4 to 5 families each. The richest and most important families had the largest houses. Inside and out, the big houses were often decorated with paintings and carvings. The big houses had no windows. Instead, they had a hole in the roof to let fresh air in and the smoke from fires out. So all along the sides of the walls, if you've been inside the Ridgefield one, it looks like bunk beds kind of along the walls, and different families would have their kind of area of the house with the beds along the sides, and then in the middle would be where they could have the fire to do their cooking. One of the most common things found among the Northwest Indians was the totem pole. A totem pole was a large wooden log with beautiful carvings usually placed in front of their homes. Its purpose was to show the ancestors and the social rank of the family. Food. The Northwest Indians lived on an area that allowed them to eat different types of food. They received an endless supply of fish, seals, sea otters, and whales from the ocean. They also had plenty of animals and fruits from the forest around them. They didn't have to farm like a lot of the other tribes that we've read about. They had plenty of food that they could just go around and hunt and gather from. Salmon season. In the fall, during salmon season, they were able to catch enough fish to feed their families for the entire year. Fishermen made fences of tree saplings to bring the fish toward the waiting nets. As the salmon swam upstream, the Indians were able to pull thousands of big salmon from the water. You can see in the picture, they're showing some people drying the fish so that it would keep for a lot more time. First food ceremony. Once winter was over, the Northwest Indians celebrated the first food ceremony. In the Indian culture, no one is to go hunting or gathering until the first food ceremony was held. This ceremony thanked the Creator for the harvest. Religion. The Northwest Indians believed in unseen forces and divine powers. They had rituals and ceremonies for everything they had and were given, living and non living. They believed that all things on earth contain power or a spiritual force. The Northwest Indians were great craftspersons and artists. They made by hand everyday things, such as baskets, blankets, clothing, and canoes. Because they were surrounded by forests, they used wood to make their totem poles, plants and grasses to weave baskets and mats. They also used purple shells from the nearby ocean and made beads out of them. They would use these beads to make beautiful necklaces and belts. Sometimes these strings of shells were used as money, also known as wampum. The Northwest Indians were also very skilled at making canoes. They used wood from cedar trees to make the canoe's frame and bark from birch trees to cover the frame. Tree roots were used as thread to stitch the pieces of bark together. Then they rubbed gum from evergreen trees onto the birch bark to keep the water out. They often carved beautiful pictures and animals on the canoes. And finally, clothing. The people of the Pacific Northwest used material found in the region where they lived. In the hot weather, men wore breechcloths made of either animal skins, woven grass, or reeds. During winter, they used to put on animal skins or woven cedar shirts and leggings. Women wore skirts and capes of woven cedar strips. In the winter, clothing was made of animal skins.